So I think we're about ready to go. So if you're watching the video, just say hi on the chat. What we're going to be doing today is going through the solo from Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen. It's got quite a lot of different techniques in there, so we'll be breaking it down into manageable sections. I'll look at all the techniques like bending, how to get the speed up in the picking, and also we'll look at the notes as well, and sort of where to play them on the fretboard. So I'll start off by playing the solo. I'll play it at sort of normal speed, and then I'll play it a little bit slower so you can get a feel for it, and then we'll really dive into breaking it down into the parts. So this is it at about normal speed. Thanks, Dan. Yeah, some lovely licks in this song. Brian May is a fantastic guitar player. So we'll do it again, slower now. Connor Baxter says, great tone, thanks Connor. I'm playing through a Kemper. I've gone for as close to a Brian May sort of sound as I can get with it, really. Okay, so hi Bendy. I hope you're enjoying the video. Yeah, we're gonna kick off now with we'll break it down into sections. So the first thing to say about this solo is all in E flat major, or right up until towards the end. But yeah, E flat major. So and this is that. We start off around here. So if we talk about positions on the guitar, position is where the fret that your index finger is on, really. So we're starting off in 8th position. Thanks, Eva. So index finger on the 8th fret, and this is E flat major scale. Okay, and in fact, this is actually just based on this section of the solo. It just comes from E flat major pentatonic. It's that shape 1, which for most people is the first shape they learn from it. So he's got a question from Salas here. What are the basic things for beginners? Well, I'd say mastering things like your open chords, timing, picking notes, stuff like that. It's all great stuff to work on when you're a beginner. Today we're going to try and focus on this Bohemian Rhapsody solo, which is a bit more advanced. But if you stick with us, hopefully you'll still find some stuff that's useful. But if you are looking for more beginner stuff, either keep an eye on this Facebook page, because we're doing live videos all the time aimed at different levels, or go to our website, which is yourguitaracademy.com, and we'll pin a comment on here with a link to that place. But yeah, go to yourguitaracademy.com, and we've got loads and loads of really in-depth beginner videos, beginner video guitar lessons. So yeah, if you're looking for beginner stuff, check that out first. But if you're looking to do Bohemian Rhapsody, stick with me. So this section, the first part sounds like this. And this is all in the same position. This is your E flat major pentatonic. All right. So looking at the strings and the frets, it starts off with your index finger on the 8th fret of the D string. The next note is your 3rd finger on the 10th fret of the G string, but that's also bent up. and that note is actually bent a whole tone up, which on the guitar means 2 frets higher. That's where we are, 2 frets higher. So we do the first note here, 8th fret on the D string, bend up. Go to the 10th fret on the G string, bend up, whole tone bend, and then release the bend. So you're actually on the 10th, the note on the 10th fret of the G string, and then down to the 8th fret on the G string. Now the next note is 11th fret on the B string. After that, it's 8th fret on the B string, and then another whole tone bend. So that's 2 steps, 2 frets on the B string, 11th fret bending up 2 frets. So the whole thing is this. So now let's have a look at the technique for bending, because that is absolutely key for this. There's a lot of bending in this song. Okay, so the trick with this is the way I like to mostly do my bends from my 3rd finger. It's strongest, and I'm not bending by trying to use my fingers. I'm not trying to sort of like extend my fingers. Like you can hear as I'm doing that bend, the control's not there. It's kind of slipping away under my fingers. The thing to do is get your fingertip right on the string, and that's all that's going to be touching the string. And then you have your fingers at a slight angle to the frets, and you use the strength in your forearm. It's a rotation, okay? Because your forearm's going to be a lot stronger than just using your fingers to push the string. Your fingers stay pretty much solid. Okay? So, once you've got that technique and you feel like you're pushing the string up comfortably, the next step is to really make sure you're getting that perfectly in tune, because if your bends aren't quite right, it will really make the song sound off, the solo sound off. So like this. Sounds horrible out of tune. The guitar's still in tune, I'm just not hitting the bends quite right. So a way to practice that bend: play the note that you're starting on, then fret the note without bending, so 2 frets up. Fret the note 2 frets up, hear it, try and remember that note in your head, and then try and match that. You can keep bending until you reach it. And then once you're there, remember that how much pressure you're having to put on the string, because sometimes you need to be able to get to that bend without hearing it. Oh, hello Dave Page, you're on a train. That sounds lovely. I hope you've got a guitar on the train with you. All right, so that's bending. Really make sure you're doing it from your forearm, a rotation of your forearm. Okay, not trying to use your fingers, sort of by extending your fingers. It's just not going to have the same control, especially if you want to do things like put vibrato on, which I think you can do in this song quite nicely. So once you get to the top of the bend, if you want to put vibrato on, make sure you've hit the note first, and then start putting the vibrato on there. Right. And that's it. That's the first section, the first position. So there we are, that's the next section. So we'll look at it in terms of where you are on the neck. I think that makes the most sense. So you can just practice the section without having to jump around. So we're still in E flat major here. But this time we're in like D shape. So the position is going to be 13th fret. So your index finger is going to be on the 13th fret of the guitar. Oh yeah, the 13th position we call that. And remember, if you're unsure about any of these scales, so this is still E flat major scale, just D shape now. If you go onto our website, yourguitaracademy.com, we'll have this video in HD quality, and we'll have a full write-up with the scales that are used as well. So if you're unsure of that, make sure you check that out and get those scales really under your fingers. It's definitely a good way to approach learning songs, sort of knowing where the notes have come from. Otherwise, it just seems like everything's come from nowhere. So we've got the first section here. That's 8th position up to 13th position. So the frets there are 13th with your index finger on the B string, 15th on the B string, 16th on the B string. And I like to do that with my index finger, then my middle finger, and then my third finger, just because I'm coming up to a bend. And again, it's a whole tone bend. So use exactly the same technique. Okay, rotate that forearm. So you can see as I'm doing it, my fingers are kind of lining up with the frets. They start at an angle, and as I rotate my arm, they line up with the frets. Another thing you can do for for practicing bending is you can also use a chromatic tuner. So if you play the note that you're on, that you're going to be bending up. So let's go back to this B flat here. This is the 11th fret on the B string. It's bending up to a C. Like that. You could have a tuner on, listening to the note you're playing, and make sure your guitar's in tune first, but then bend up to that note, and once the tuner says you're on a C, then you know you got it right. Hey Simone, thanks man. And remember that tension in your hand, how much you're having to move the string. Definitely do it by feel. Don't do it by looking at how much the string's moved or anything like that, because that could change a little bit. Okay, so let's go over these first two sections. Okay, so that's before it starts getting quite speedy. The tricky stuff with that section that we've just looked at, those first two positions, is really getting those bends exactly to pitch. Because it is a little bit slower than the fast stuff coming up, you're really going to hear if you're out of tune because you're spending more time on each note. So we'll just recap that again, just the frets. So 8th fret on the D string, 10th fret on the G string, bent up a whole tone, release to the 10th fret, and then it's the 8th fret on the G string, 11th fret on the B, 8th on the B, 11th fret bent up a whole tone on the B again. Okay, and then 13 on the B, 15 on the B, 16 on the B, 13, 15, 16, and then bend that 16 up a whole tone. So just practice that round until you're really comfortable with it. One thing I think I'll mention about that bit there, one thing I've noticed when I'm teaching students one-to-one is people, when you're first looking at bending, it's this actual release of the bent note. It's quite tricky. What you've got to remember there is you're keeping the pressure on the string. Okay? You don't want this sort of thing happen where you kind of go, because that's not going to sound right. You really need that to sustain through. You don't need to pick it again. And then it's to pull off to that 8th fret. Okay, the next section, this has got a bit of a stretch on it. That's allowing us to change positions without having to shift our hand too quickly. That stretch just allows it. So we're starting on the 13th fret of the B string again, and then it's quite a big jump up to the 18th fret on the B string, but then that draws us into our next position. Which is the C shape. Sorry, E flat major, C shape. And then we're into this faster part. So let's look at the frets again. It's 13th fret, 18th, and then you're up onto the E string, 15, 16, 18, and then another whole tone bend. So really spend time on this solo when you're practicing, just getting used to bending. So let's look at that section one more time. 13th on the B, 18th on the B, 15th on the E, 16th on the E, 18th on the E, bend up a whole tone on the E, 18th fret. And with that part, I'm doing alternate picking. If you find that tricky, then I mean that's just a sign that there's something to work on. But one thing with it is try to pick from your wrist. If you start doing things like from your elbow, you tend to have less control. And you get this little string noise happening. And if you find that your thumb's doing this, try and prevent that from happening. Just relax your hand a bit more. Because otherwise what happens is you feel like you're picking from your wrist, but then your thumb's moving as well. And they sort of work against each other, and you end up not being able to pick in time. So even though you feel like you're playing fast, it's not quite in sync, and so the notes aren't coming out clearly. Cool. Okay, and that brings us into this 15th position. This is the C shape, still E flat major. Once again, if you're unsure about any of these scales, check out the write-up on yourguitaracademy.com. We'll have the full scale shapes on there, and we've actually got loads of other lessons as well that will teach you, if you're not sure what I'm talking about with when I'm saying C shape, D shape and stuff like that, This is from something that's called the caged system, C-A-G-E-D system. And it's just a way of breaking down the fretboard into sort of easier to visualize parts. And it means you can play your scales in all different positions without having to memorize the note that's in every single note that's in the scale. So we're coming up to this part now. And this part's pretty quick. So I'll play that a few more times slowly. Okay, so yeah, still E flat major. And we're starting on the high E string now, 18th fret with our little finger. And we're running down. Now the phrasing of this is pretty odd. I found it quite tricky to learn. I just had to go through it slowly and just repeat it lots until it kind of sunk in, the way to play it. And I think that's the way that works for most people. It doesn't sort of, it's not very easy to remember. So the way I think about it is to split it into two sections. That being the first section, and that being the second section. And practice them separately until you're comfortable with them, and then just put them together. So let's have a look at the first section of this. Okay, so we're starting on the 18th fret of the high E string, 16th, 15th, back up to the 16th. So, and then we've got what I'm going to be calling like a trill, but it's just there's a hammer on, pull off, and then we're on to the 18th fret of the B string. Okay, so that is in itself, that it just speeds up just a little bit when you do the hammer on pull off. So that's something you could practice on its own. And just spend time getting that comfortable. But what you're doing here is you keep your index finger down. And if you lift it off, it's just more work that you don't need to be doing. Okay. So pick down, hammer on, pull off, and then doing an upstroke, little finger on the 18th fret of the B string. Make that into an exercise. Okay. Once we've done that, it comes back up to the high E string, down to the 18th on the B, and then the 16th on the B. Okay, so that's that first section. I'll do that again a bit more slowly. And the frets are 18, 16, 15, 16, 15, 16, 15, then changing string, 18, back up to the E string, 15, 18, 16. And then the next section is, and so they've got they're kind of similar, and they both got this sort of trill thing. So that's where we've got to. Next section is this. Start with the index finger on the 15th fret of the B string, then up to the 16th, and then 15th again. Hammer on, pull off. 17th fret on the G string, back up to the B string, 15th, 17th, and then it's the 15th fret on the G. And you pick that twice. Okay, so let's just go through that a few more times, that second section. Alright, so spend time practicing those two bits separately. Once you get comfortable with them, start sticking them together. And what I found really helped me with this is just listening to the song lots and lots to get that phrasing in my head, because that is an unusual phrasing. Alright. Lost my microphone there. Let's stick that back on. So we'll get into the next section in a minute. I think it's worth at this point talking about alternate picking. So for this, I'm trying to do pretty strict alternate picking. I don't think it matters that much. Like if you're doing alternate picking or maybe economy picking, but definitely don't try to do all downstroke. You see how much more aggressive that looks. It doesn't really help with the tone. Everything gets a bit too snappy. And it just doesn't sound very nice. So I'm using alternate picking for most of this. That means down, up, always with my wrist. And when there's the hammer on pull off section, it just gives my hand a little break, my right hand. Okay, so I mentioned economy picking there. That's where you're just always picking in the direction of the string, the next string. So you can see there, my hand's moving a little bit less. Because I'm not. Sometimes I'm not doing a very strict down up down up down up. I'm just picking in the direction of the string. Personally, I prefer alternate picking for this section. But if you're comfortable doing economy, then go for it. This next section, I think economy picking might come in a bit more handy. Because that really picks up speed there. Okay, so again, we're running up E flat major, still in the same shape that we were in, but now we're starting on a lower note and running to the high note. So this part actually just runs up the scale, which you'll generally find for sort of really fast licks. A lot of the time it is just running up and down scales because they're easier to practice, and and if you're playing a whole load of notes, there's quite a lot of notes available to you if you're playing a whole scale. Okay, so let's just run the frets on that. Starts on the 15th, 17th. This is both on the G string, so and then we're up to the B string, 15, 16, 18, and 15, 16, 18 on the E string as well. So it's actually quite a nice scale shape, it's quite symmetrical. And it does the same thing twice, and then there's a bend. From the 18th, it's another whole tone bend. All right, so let's just look at that slowly, look at some of the technique involved. So practice this slowly to begin with. You can either do down, up, down, up, down, up, like this. I find that for the faster parts of this, that gets quite tricky to do. So I try and do a bit of economy picking. Just from where I change from the B string to the high E string. So it's down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down. And the second time it's up for the bend. So the key part here is from this note, the 18th fret on the B string to the 15th fret on the E string, it's down, down. Where if I was doing very strict alternate picking, it would have to be up on the 15th fret of the E, like that. But it just flows nicer to just do another down stroke there. Okay. So let's look at running that slowly. Okay. So that's quite a lot we've looked at so far. Let's put it back together up to where we've got to, and then we'll look at the end. Okay, that's where we've got up to. Definitely keep them in their individual sections until you're really comfortable with them. Then you can start stitching them together, like just do two bits together. So that's stitching two parts together. Get them going really nicely before you stick the next section on. So basically your solo just gets longer and longer as you get more comfortable with the parts. Sorry. Okay, so after that, we're back down into our D shape for that bit. So that starts now your middle finger on the 15th fret of the B string, third finger on the 16th, index finger on the 13th. Same thing again. So that's 15, 16, 13, 15, 16, 13, and then 15, 16, bend, whole tone bend up. And then it kind of leaves the key a little bit there as we get to the end of the solo. So just learn this last bit as the frets really. So we've got then after that it drops down to the 10th position, index finger on the 10th fret, on the G string, 12th fret, 13th fret. Now the 13th fret here, I would use your third finger because your little finger is going to be playing the 13th fret on the E string and then back to the 13th fret on the G. So next note is the 14th fret on the B string, and it's down, down, up, down, up. Sorry about that. So that's the last bit before we go back into the singing. So this is on the G string, 3rd finger on the 6th fret, hammer on with your little finger onto the 7th fret, pull off to the 6th, pull off to the 4th, and then set a little finger on the 7th fret of the D string. This again is something that could be quite tricky. Doing these pull-offs with more than one finger, there's going to be a tendency for your 3rd finger to want to come off at the same time as your little finger, and the notes aren't going to come across very clearly. So take your time with that. You could just practice something like this. So that's 7, 6, 4. And just work on building the speed up on that. But always listen for that separation. As soon as you start getting that sort of thing happening where you can only really hear 2 distinct notes, that means you're not in sync anymore, and you need to slow it back down. Work on your finger independence. This is a good exercise there. And the last note is that 7th fret on the D string. So we've got and that's the last section of the solo. So with this whole thing then, there are quite a lot of individual techniques that need to be worked on to get it sounding as good as you can get it. So I'll keep saying this, but just break it down into individual sections. Anything that you find you can't get straight away, that is a sign that it's something to isolate and work on. So for a lot of people, it's going to be getting those bends to pitch, and actually like the 3rd note of it really is that released bend. Keep the pressure on the string. So because we're coming off of a bend, it's very easy to start thinking the pressure's just got to be coming sort of up and down, but it's still got to be into the fretboard. Otherwise, you lose the note completely. So that's another reason why it's really good to use your arm to do the bend and your finger to just press onto the string. Okay? Now this is another bit that will probably take extra isolated practice because it's got a big stretch there. That's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fret stretch. So if you feel that's not comfortable, if you're having to take your index finger off to get there, then that's also something to work on. You should, to play this solo comfortably, you should be able to make that stretch with your index finger down as well. Okay, and then after that, the really hard part is just the speed of the next section. That sort of cascading notes. Okay, so again, break it down. To begin with, you could even just think about it per string. So let's look at that. It's on the E string, it's 18, 16, 15, 16, 15, hammer on and pull off from the 16th to the 15th. Oh, thanks Tim and Debanja. And then you're going to go down to the 18th fret on the B string, 15th fret on the E, and then 18th fret on the B again, and then down to the 16th on the B. And that's that first, that's what I'm calling the first section of this fast down scale run. I'll do that slowly. Okay, next section. Sorry, it starts on the 15th fret. So it's 15, 16, 15, hammer on 16, pull off to 15, 17th fret on the G string, back to the 15 on the B, 17 on the G, and then 15 on the G. Sorry, start on the 15th fret. So you can practice it like that. Just make sure you know exactly where each note is. If you find that you're guessing at all on this, then you just haven't learned it well enough yet. It's not under your fingers enough. You can't be unsure about where the note is if you're trying to get something up to speed. If you find yourself going like that, I'm playing the 15th. I'm playing the 17th instead of the 16th. If you ever sort of find you're kind of finding your way around, then you've just got to make sure you've got to slow it right back down again. Make sure you know exactly where each note is. There's no guessing to it. That's why it's also really good to actually spend time learning the scales that this is based on, because then that way your fingers will have a pretty good idea of where they're supposed to be. Okay. And with that section, I said it before, the phrasing is just really weird. So listen to it a lot, just so that you could hear it in your head. That's another key thing. If you can't hear it in your head, then it's quite a lot to expect your hands to be able to play it. So I'll just play it a few times slowly, and then you could just listen to this if you wanted just to get the phrasing. We're going to have it on our website, yourguitaracademy.com, as a high quality video. So you could just kind of loop back just to this section. Okay, so yeah, hopefully that will be useful for practicing. You don't have to have your guitar either. You can just listen to it and try and just learn it enough that you know where all the notes are, how the phrasing goes. Okay, so in my opinion, compared to that, this next bit where it's just a scale, there's no extra phrasing to it, is easier by comparison because you could just practice scales and that gets you 90% of the way there. Or more than 90%. And with that, just practice it again slowly. The point of practicing slow, it's not that you're always going to be slow with it either. You eventually, once you know exactly what you're doing, you need to push the speed to get faster. But the point of practicing slow is so it gives you time to think about exactly like what finger is doing each note. That should be the same every time. Which direction you're picking, that should be the same every time. If you're going to do alternate picking or economy picking, all this stuff is stuff that you should be thinking about when you're practicing it slowly. Practice it slowly enough times that you'll only do it one way. That becomes your muscle memory. And that's when you can start pushing the speed. So something to mention about pushing speed is it's going to get sloppy, I think. You don't need to worry about that. As long as you spent the time doing it slowly to begin with, that you know you're doing it the same every time and you're doing it the way you want every time. You're not just kind of leaving it up to your fingers and hoping for the best. It's gonna get a little bit sloppy. But once you feel like you're at that point where you're at that speed where it starts to break down a little bit, it's not like you can't do it at all. It starts to break down a little bit. That's kind of where you want to be practicing, just working on getting it neater. You're not working on getting it faster at that point because it's already going to be quite fast. You're just working on neatening it up. Once you've got that happy, once you're happy with that, you can then push the speed again and it will go sloppy again, but you can just work on getting it neat again. And before you know it, you'll be at the tempo of the song. Another thing to mention on that is you could think about playing it faster than the song, like for the scale parts. Just if you can get it clean and faster than the song, it means when you come to actually playing the solo from the song along with the record, it's going to feel easier, which is always a nice feeling. Especially if you're going to sort of play it live or something like that, then you get the adrenaline rush and everything, and you need to be sure that you don't need to think about it, that your hands can just do it. Okay. And then it slows down again. We're back to bends that we've got to really keep an eye on, make sure they're perfectly in tune. So that part might be quite tough as well. Down, down, up, down, up. So you can see I'm doing down and then down, up, down, up. I'm trying to make those picks as small as possible. And then back to that bit. That's another part that you can make into an exercise. And yeah, that same idea. If you practice it harder than the actual, or faster than the actual song is, then when you actually come to play the song, it's going to feel nice and relaxed. Okay, so we are nearly running out of time here. I will play through the solo again. We'll do it section by section, then I'll play through it at full speed and I'll play it through it slowly. So this is the first section. Okay, next section is this. Okay, next section. And then. You can think of that as one or two sections, it's the same thing twice, and then the last bit. Then we slide down, and that's the last little section. Okay, so you learn all them as sections or licks, whatever you want to call it, separately, and then just stick them together. So I'll probably, most sensible way to start is probably just section 1, and then once you're happy with that, start working on section 2. Once you're happy with that, put sections 1 and 2 together, and then you've got one larger section, and then you can just start adding each section on, so your solo just gets progressively longer and longer. That's 1, this is 2. Next section. Next section. Next section. Next one. Next one. Next one. And the last one. Okay, so I'll put the whole lot together now. I'll do it one last time, nice and slow. Okay. Well, thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you got something from that and enjoyed it. If you want to check it out again, you can either look at it on the Facebook page, or if you go to our website, yourguitaracademy.com, we'll have the lesson in high quality video, and it'll all be written up as well. So we'll have the scales that I've been using there, and notes of things that I've mentioned to think about when you're practicing. So keep an eye on this Facebook page as well. We've always got new live streams coming up that cover all different kinds of areas. So some rock, some blues kind of stuff, poppy stuff, all that sort of thing. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Bye bye.